Deep in the Amazon, explorers just ruined the best game of hide-and-seek in history. They stumbled across a 500-pound snake snoozing in the mud, convinced its disguise was perfect. At first glance, it looked like a famous green anaconda, and then the lab tests came back. The massive predator turned out to be one of the largest snakes in the world, and a brand new species undiscovered for millions of years. The Amazon is one of the most unwelcoming places on the planet. It's like a video game setting where everything is trying to get you. You've got frogs that sweat neurotoxins, ants with stings that feel like getting shot, and electric eels that can tase you if you get too close. And that's just the start. But the real kings of the jungle are anacondas. They are the ones handing out the strongest hugs in the animal kingdom. They grow up to 15 feet and are heavy enough to rock a boat. An anaconda can squeeze about 30 times harder than a human hand and move its body of 400 pounds in a split second. That's why people don't casually swim here. However, nature decided that wasn't scary enough, and a recent expedition in Ecuador found an even bigger specimen. It was part of the National Geographic shoot for a show about extreme places, starring Will Smith. The team followed the local Guarani guides deep into the Bameno territory, a secluded area where they insisted the real giants lived. They weren't lying. On the riverbank was an unusually large female serpent. They named her Ana Julia. She was nearly 21 feet and weighing around 440 pounds. That's the weight of an adult grizzly bear. She stretched nearly to the NBA three-point line, but her weight was what made her unique. Most of us imagine snakes as long, thin garden hoses, but Ana Julia was wider than a human waist. There are a couple of reasons why snakes can get so huge. The river supports a lot of their weight, so they're not hauling huge bodies over land all day. They also don't spend a lot of calories chasing capybaras for miles. When they're hunting, they can set an ambush and wait for hours. Their eyes and nostrils sit on top of their heads, so they can stay almost fully underwater and still watch and breathe. Anacondas can also dive. They're able to close the nostrils like valves and stay underwater for almost 20 minutes. They blend in so well that a thirsty deer could be drinking inches away from a snout without even realizing it. When they're resting, they can stay in one spot for more than a day. And because they're snakes, they can eat one massive meal and just doze off for a while. We know the snake is a she because, among anacondas, it's the females that grow this big. This is because of a genetic evolutionary phenomenon called sexual dimorphism. The males are puny in comparison, barely reaching 9 feet. Nature gave the ladies supersized bodies because carrying dozens of baby snakes takes a massive amount of energy and storage space. And anacondas don't lay eggs like most snakes. They give birth to live young, sometimes around 40 at a time. Snakes can keep growing slowly for much of their lives, so reaching Ana Julia's size means she's likely a long-surviving elder, possibly even decades old. We can't really tell the age of a snake. They shed their skin, and that isn't something that can be shown on a blood test. However, what really mattered was the DNA test that showed that Ana Julia wasn't actually the green anaconda. The DNA difference was a massive 5.5%. That sounds small, but in genetics, it's huge. Humans and chimps only differ by about 1%, so these two snakes are 5 times more different from each other than we are from chimps. Scientists call this a cryptic species. It's a phenomenon where animals look like identical twins on the outside, but are total strangers on the genetic level. Some examples you might not be aware of are giraffes. To us, they all look the same, but genetics shows there are several different species. While scientists were surprised by the DNA results of the big snake, the local Guarani guides were not. In fact, they said Ana Julia wasn't even the biggest one out there. They reported seeing anacondas up to about 25 feet. If one giant twin went undiscovered, there are probably even bigger ones. However, even a 25-foot anaconda is like a shoelace compared to what used to live here. If we turn back the clock about 60 million years, the Amazon had monsters twice as long. This is the Titan boa, fossils found in a coal mine in Colombia suggest that the snake stretched between 42 and 50 feet. The creature was long but also unbelievably heavy. While our modern record breaker Anahulia weighed 440 pounds, Titan boa tipped the scales at 1.25 tons. That's 2,500 pounds of weight with a 3-foot wide body. A snake as heavy as an average walrus, but much, much stronger. So, what caused those creatures to grow so large? The answer is heat. Reptiles are cold-blooded, meaning their bodies don't create their own temperature. They depend on the environment outside. Back then, the tropics were warmer than today. In that kind of constant heat, a giant snake doesn't burn energy just trying to stay alive. It can grow larger and stay active more easily. Titan boa was probably the greatest wrestler of the prehistoric world. It didn't have venom, only its mighty squeeze. Researchers estimate it could reach 5 times the squeezing power of the modern green anaconda, which is already strong enough to lock down big prey. It had to be that strong because its favorite snack was giant turtles with thick shells. Was it strong enough to take down a T-Rex? That would be a cool fight, but impossible. Titan boa lived millions of years after the non-bird dinosaurs were gone, so they never met. Ancient oceans were home to some gigantic marine snakes. One of the biggest known examples is from a group called Paleophis. Fossils show that some of those sea snakes could grow just as big as Titan boa, around 40 feet. They were nothing like the small, colorful snakes we see today, hiding in coral reefs. The largest ocean snakes alive now, like olive snakes, usually reach only about 6 feet. Paleophis had long, heavy bodies built for warm, shallow seas. Instead of weaving through coral, they likely cruised along coastlines and continental shelves, moving through open water. When you are big, you need big meals, so these snakes were hunting primitive sharks and massive fish. They were also built differently from land snakes. Their bodies were flattened on the sides to cut through the current, and their tails ended in wide paddles to push them forward. Today, those ocean giants are gone, but their distant cousins are still patrolling the water. Modern sea snakes are usually no bigger than a broomstick, but they traded size for a different kind of weapon: venom. Some of them, like the faint-banded sea snake, have venom that is 100 times more toxic than a cobra's. Speaking of venom, the Amazon is full of it. It's home to over a dozen types of dangerous pit vipers like the bushmaster. There's also the Brazilian wandering spider, which is one of the most toxic spiders on Earth, not to mention the Amazonian scorpion. So the question is, what if some of these also have bigger and meaner cousins, just like the green anaconda and its newly discovered northern cousin? If a 500-pound snake had a hidden twin species, who knows what else is hiding out there? Maybe that spider has a cousin with completely different superpowers. Maybe there's a type of caiman we haven't even identified yet. The only thing we know for sure is that the locals swear there are even bigger snakes than Anahulia, so we're probably not far from learning about the next record breaker. In 1969, 2 brothers went fishing on the Altamaha River in the Clark's Bluff area. They cast their fishing rods, ready to wait for some fish to bite their bait, but at that moment, they saw something strange. At first, they thought it was a sturgeon, but then they saw that the length of this sturgeon was about 13 feet, almost as tall as 2 basketball players. Of course, such a size didn't frighten the brothers because some species of sturgeon can reach a length of 24 feet, which is about 3.5 basketball players. Something else surprised them. The face of this creature resembled that of an alligator. The tail was horizontal. It had a triangular crest along its upper body and sharp metal-colored teeth protruding from its mouth. A creature that looked like a dinosaur was quite an unusual phenomenon for the time when Steven Spielberg was an aspiring young director and didn't even think about creating Jurassic Park. So, on that day in 1969, 2 brothers saw something elusive, like Bigfoot or the Loch Ness Monster. They saw a creature that had been the subject of stories for centuries. a creature that is being searched for even today. They met Altamaha. This is a famous and narrow circles monster that lives near the mouth of the Altamaha River in southeastern Georgia. People from the Lower Muskogee Creek tribe talked about it long before the British colonization. In ancient times, there were legends about a snake-like lizard that bellowed and hissed. So this monster has already been elusive for several centuries. But do you know what distinguishes Altamaha from Nessie, Chupacabra, and others? Yes, there are no bad quality photos or videos of Altamaha, but there's a huge amount of evidence from different periods. For the locals, Altamaha is so real that one artist created a detailed statue of this river beast. Of course, it's not accurate because it's based on eyewitness accounts. But you'll probably agree that it would be scary to see such a cute animal in the middle of the river while fishing. Almost all the stories are about a creature without hind limbs, but with front flippers, which swims like a dolphin, has a crocodile face, big eyes, and large, sharp teeth. It's gray or green with a whitish-yellow belly and a bony crest on its crown. And most interestingly, people have seen this creature in different sizes. Of course, when you see an unknown dinosaur-like thing, you can exaggerate its size or estimate it incorrectly, which explains the difference in statements. But there's also a probability that Georgia is home to a big family of Altamaha. One of the first people to see this creature and report it to a local newspaper was Captain Delano. On his schooner Eagle, he was sailing near St. Simon's Island, below the mouth of the Altamaha River, when he saw a creature about 70 feet long, which is almost twice the size of a school bus. Its body was like a barrel, and its head was like that of an alligator. It's possible that the captain greatly exaggerated the size of the monster because of the excitement, but several other people who were with him in the boat confirmed his words. From that moment on, reports of the river monster began to appear more often. Someone saw it flashing along the river. Others saw how it behaved defensively towards people. And some people reported that Altamaha was just basking in the sun. Just imagine its displeasure. Not only fishers met Altamaha. In the 20s of the last century, lumberjacks were crossing the river and saw a huge snake-like monster. In 1935, a group of hunters saw a creature they called a giant snake. In the 1940s, Boy Scouts encountered a similar creature. And in the 1950s, 2 employees from Reedsville State Prison saw it. For so many years, people have been meeting it, and no one has ever managed to catch the monster. Perhaps it's smarter than it looks and always very careful. Maybe people are afraid to touch it. Perhaps they consider it a national treasure and protect it. But one day, there was a case when Altamaha almost fell into a trap. In the summer of 1980, 2 men saw a monster wallowing on a muddy shore. It seemed like it was stuck and trying to get out. The witnesses said that the rough, dark-skinned creature had finally left the shore, dived into the water, and disappeared. Later that year, another man said he had seen something similar. A snake-like large creature with 2 brown humps protruding from the water. It dived into the water and churned the surface, like a boat while moving. Other witnesses catching crabs described Altamaha as the largest eel in the world. Okay, stop! Many saw it in the last century, but what about more recent news? Is the monster still alive? Oh yeah. In 2002, a man was pulling a boat upriver near the town of Brunswick when he noticed something large, 20 feet long and about 6.5 feet wide, breaking out of the water. In 2010, a photographer caught something strange on camera floating along a canal in the city of Darien. And these cases are just the ones we know about. Surely, many people have seen this thing but haven't talked about it in newspapers or on the internet. If you don't believe these stories, you can go to Darien, get on a boat, and ride along the river to see this monster with your own eyes. Yes, according to reports, this creature always tries to avoid people. It's very cautious, but all the same, you should not get too close to this water lizard twice the size of a school bus. Go to the Museum of Darien to take a photo of the Altamaha statue. There are also souvenirs with the image of this monster. But let's assume that you or someone else managed not only to take a clear photo of the Altamaha, but also catch it. What is the next course of action? What are you going to tell the world, and how will the world react to it? What will happen to the poor animal, surrounded by millions of flashes from reporters' cameras? Will people make a show out of it or send it to a lab? Fortunately, in 2001, scientists already developed an action plan. This plan was drawn up by Scotland's nature agency, NatureScot, since they had concerns about the Loch Ness Monster. At some point, it became too popular and too many people tried to catch it, so the agency became concerned about saving the life of the famous creature. They showed the Nessie contingency plan that can also be used for any unknown animal that lives in water or on land. According to the plan, if the ancient lizard is captured, scientists should take its DNA sample and just release it back into the wild. Fair enough. The animal will receive the same legal protection as other local wildlife in Scotland. All attempts to catch it will be prohibited. But let's imagine that this is exactly what happens. Scientists receive a DNA sample of the Altamaha, the Loch Ness Monster, or other similar creatures. What could those be? Some ancient descendants of dinosaurs? For example, the plesiosaur looks like a distant relative of these monsters. It's huge and has a long neck and a toothy mouth. What if it managed to survive and reach the Altamaha River? Or it may be a completely new, unknown species that lives in deep freshwater. Some people who saw Altamaha said that it had produced a hissing sound. What if it's some kind of ancient python or anaconda that moved from land to water and grew fins? In any case, it should not be ruled out that it may be some kind of eel or sturgeon. One day, someone saw it, was impressed, and told other people about it with great exaggeration. Everyone believed it and started spreading the story. What do you think?
This is Lolong, the largest crocodile ever found, stretching about 20 feet long. Now, imagine living in a world full of Lolongs, only with longer legs and the ability to run on land like a greyhound. It sounds like a nightmare monster, but she was real. Fossils of giant crocodile-like creatures were discovered back in the 1930s. And now, scientists have found that these beasts once roamed and dominated lands far bigger than they imagined. We're talking about the cebicids. They're a family of prehistoric crocodiles that once ruled South America, especially in what is now Argentina, Brazil, and Bolivia. And scientists discovered that these ancient predators were huge. Some species may have grown up to 20 feet long. Now, to give you an idea of how big that is, well, that would be you, and that would be her. Yeah, good luck outrunning that. Oh, by the way, they wouldn't be slithering in the water. They'd be walking right beside you. And that's actually the biggest difference between them and their crocodile relatives. Most cebicid species lived entirely on land. They were like lions, powerful, moving on all fours, but with tough crocodile-like skin. That image alone is already terrifying. But it gets worse when you figure these guys were fierce predators and we could have easily ended up as part of their dinner. Everything about them was perfectly built for the chase. They had narrow, dinosaur-like skulls and long legs that helped them sprint after their prey. They especially liked sloths and rodents. But honestly, with those sharp saw-like teeth, well, anything that crossed their path didn't stand much of a chance. And if one of their victims tried to fight back, well, that would have been a big mistake. Most of these crocodile ancestor species had tough bony plates under their skin that worked like natural armor. They were seriously tough, but don't worry, you don't have to fear them. Luckily, for us at least, these beasts aren't roaming the earth anymore. According to Jonathan Block, a paleontologist at the Florida Museum of Natural History, these mysterious predators may have been the last of the Nodosuchians, a broad group of reptiles that first appeared back in the Jurassic period. Yep, these bad boys shared the planet with dinosaurs. That is, until the asteroid hit the Earth about 66 million years ago. Dinosaurs went kaput, and mammals took over. They became the land animals, but their path to the top wasn't exactly smooth. They still had to deal with the cebicids in South America. That's right, those tough crocodile-like predators actually survived the asteroid disaster. They also ruled and stayed at the top of the food chain until around 11 million years ago. Or at least that's what scientists thought, until they started finding strange fossilized teeth in the Caribbean. Uh-oh. Let's go back about 30 years when researchers uncovered two roughly 18 million-year-old teeth in Cuba. They had a tapered shape and tiny sharp serrations, perfectly designed for tearing into meat. There was no mistake. Scientists were looking at something that belonged to a top predator. But the question was, who? Had they found a fossil of an ancient giant croc? Well, maybe. Those teeth could have been from a species of cebacid, but that was strange, since scientists didn't think such large ancient predators ever lived in the Caribbean. And things got even stranger when another tooth turned up in Puerto Rico. This one even older, about 29 million years old. But there was a problem. Those teeth alone weren't enough to identify a specific animal. They needed more, so the mystery remained unsolved. Everything changed in 2023. Local work crews were building a road in the Dominican Republic when they suddenly stumbled upon ancient bones. Researchers soon realized they were looking at a fossilized tooth, but this time it came with two vertebrae. That was a big deal, because it's really hard to tell ancient crocodile species apart just from their teeth. But with those two vertebrae, things were different. Crocodile relatives with serrated teeth usually had ball and socket joints between their vertebrae. But in cebacids, that part of the spine was flat, so that made all the difference. It was enough to confirm that the fossil from the Dominican Republic belonged to a cebacid. And just like that, scientists discovered that this ancient predator really did live in the Caribbean. And even more surprising, they found out it was roaming around at least 5 million years before cebacids were thought to have disappeared everywhere else. Okay, but why is finding their fossils in the Caribbean such a big deal? Or better yet, why were scientists so sure before this discovery that they didn't live there? Well, that's because this prehistoric reptile didn't like the sea. Let me explain. The Caribbean is a region in the Americas made up of islands and the surrounding coastal areas. That meant for a land-loving ancient crocodile to travel from, say, Colombia to the Dominican Republic, it would have had to swim. And I mean really swim. We're talking over 350 miles of open ocean with strong currents and rough waves. You can see why that would have been a serious challenge for a land-based cebacid to cross, right? So, that's why scientists thought these prehistoric crocodiles could never have lived in the Caribbean. But now that researchers are finding their fossils there, they may have to find an explanation. And that is where this discovery becomes even more interesting, as it actually supports the Garlandia hypothesis. This idea first appeared in 1994. It suggests that millions of years ago, the movement of Earth's tectonic plates caused a stretch of land, now mostly underwater, to rise up in the Caribbean. This land, called the Aves Ridge, may have connected South America all the way to Puerto Rico, and then to other Caribbean islands like Hispaniola, Cuba, and Jamaica. So basically, it worked like a temporary chain of land bridges, a kind of natural highway that once allowed animals to go from South America to the Caribbean. Mammals, amphibians, and reptiles could actually walk right across instead of taking their chances at sea. The Garlandia hypothesis definitely sounds fascinating, but it's still up for debate. It hasn't been fully accepted by scientists yet, even though plenty of studies since the 90s seem to back it up. And this new discovery of a giant crocodile-like creature in the Dominican Republic could be one more important clue pointing in that direction. It's possible that many of the places where these cebacids once thrived started to disappear as the global climate cooled. Bit by bit, some of them were pushed into warmer tropical areas, until, eventually, the only places left for them to live were the Caribbean islands. This discovery lines up with something else that ecologists have observed around the world. Islands can act like museums of biodiversity, in the sense that they offer a safe place where plants and animals can keep surviving long after their relatives on the mainland have disappeared. In the case of cebacids, the difference is striking. The most recent fossils found in South America date back between 10 and 12 million years ago. but the tooth and vertebrae found in the Dominican Republic are much younger, only about 4.5 million years old. That means this island might have been the last place these giant reptiles called home. And if those serrated teeth found on other Caribbean islands also turned out to belong to ceticids, that would be huge. That would mean that these ancient crocodile-like creatures didn't just live in the Dominican Republic. They were spread across the Caribbean. And who knows, maybe we'll still find more of its fossils in places like Puerto Rico, Haiti, and Jamaica. Although the tropics are among the most biodiverse places on Earth, much of their natural history remains a mystery. Discovering a giant ancient crocodile in the Caribbean is a reminder that the world we live in today is just one chapter of Earth's long, ever-changing history. And who knows what other prehistoric crocodiles or ancient creatures are still waiting to be found beneath our feet. Now, of course you know that the Amazon River is famous for its piranhas, bull sharks, and other creatures you don't want to meet. But there are even more dangerous rivers in the world. The deepest of them, the Congo, goes so far down in some sections that even light can't reach there. It's the only major river that crosses the equator twice and carries enough water to fill more than 13 Olympic-sized swimming pools into the Atlantic Ocean every second. Wow! Even the most experienced boaters have trouble passing through all of the river's strong currents, rapids in its upper part, and waterfalls and gorges in the lower section. The Congo currents are so fast and powerful that they even divide animals like mountains and oceans do. There are new species of fish evolving separately on the two banks as they can't reach the other side and breed with each other. One of the most dangerous types of fish living here is the Goliath tigerfish. These monsters, that grow up to 5 feet and travel at the speed of 25 miles per hour, are relatives of piranhas. Their mouths are full of vicious, razor-sharp teeth. Their females lay hundreds of thousands of eggs, and the offspring are predators from birth. You have a good reason to fear the Goliath tigerfish, as they're the only freshwater fish in Africa that have attacked crocodiles and even humans. Okay, not swimming there. There are dense jungles and more hungry wildlife, including snakes and some aggressive hippos, all along the river. Still, it's used as a water highway in Central Africa, so barges traveling on it for weeks are often crowded with up to 2,000 people and capsize every now and then. And if you believe the local folklore, there's one more thing to be afraid of: the one who stops the flow of the rivers, a dinosaur-like beast that is said to live in the Congo River basin. There have been over 100 sightings over the last century, but no one can provide solid evidence the beast is real. At the turn of the 21st century, there was a series of terrible, mysterious stories on the Kali River in Asia. Something described as a mud-colored water pig would drag swimmers underwater in front of terrified eyewitnesses. British biologist Jeremy Wade stepped up to crack the case. He noticed that all the scary incidents were happening in one specific spot, stretching about 4 miles. Villagers told him this creature was growing big and bad from all the food it got. Wade examined the water with a depth sounder and thought it could have been a whirlpool. Then the monster dragged a domestic water buffalo into the water. The buffaloes are big and heavy, so the creature that attacked it would have to be super strong. Saltwater crocodiles don't go so far inland, and the most common local species of crocodiles don't live in cold waters. There were no bull sharks in the area either. Finally, Wade spotted several goonch catfish underwater. Some of them were human-sized. They couldn't capture these monsters with a regular fishing rod, but a special ceremonial construction did the job. The largest fish was 6 feet 7 inches long and 3 times the weight of an average gaunch. It was large enough to take down a human or a large animal, but Wade mentioned there could be even bigger ones living in the Kali River. The Orinoco River in South America is dangerous to navigate because of some crazy curves and strong underwater currents. It's easy to get lost here, even if you have your GPS on. There are sudden waterfalls all along, and you must be prepared to handle those to survive. The river is the only home to a rare Orinoco crocodile and has some pretty scary-looking vampire fish swimming around. This payara fish has sharp, spiky daggers that line their gums and two elongated fangs that rise from their lower jaws. Could probably use an orthodontist and some braces, you think? It's a ferocious hunter constantly looking for the next victim, which is going to be a medium or large-sized fish. If a human catches a payara, it will defend itself, leaving cuts, nips, and bites, but there are no known cases of this cutie taking a human life. Well, that's good. The Yellow River in China received its name after its color, but it wasn't always this yellow. It was first formed at least 30 million years ago and shifted its course over 30 times over the centuries. Yellow sediments moving downstream from a plateau in the distance transformed it from clear to muddy. This fine-grained substance piled up at the bottom of the river and formed natural dams. The huge amounts of water that the river carries need to find their way to the sea, and that's when major floods happened, taking several million lives in various epochs. The locals tried to solve the problem by building higher and higher levees, but it only made things worse. Water coming out of the river would now have nowhere to back up, as the riverbed was higher than the surrounding land. This even shifted the river's mouth. Now there are massive dams and dikes all along the river to try to contain it. The Parana River is the second longest in Latin America and has many tributaries. They flow in from the highlands near the Andes, and there's a huge drainage in the wet season. This makes the river a perfect home for, guess what, piranhas. There are 30 to 60 species of these scary fish in the Parana waters. In late 2013, they attacked bathers cooling off by the water on a hot day. People started running out of the river as they felt something was biting them in the water. Luckily, no one lost their lives in the accident, but it's still considered one of the most audacious piranha attacks ever recorded. Biologists later determined that the type of piranhas, called palomates, was to blame for this, and humans had probably disturbed their breeding grounds. Well, the piranha also has a strong current that is tricky for boats and swimmers to overcome. Plus, it often floods, which can be dangerous for people living in the surrounding areas. The longest river in the world, the Nile, flows through 11 countries all the way into the Mediterranean Sea. Expeditions have spent centuries looking for its source, and no one still knows for sure where this mighty river begins. Adding to the mystery, the Nile takes an unexpected turn right in the middle of the Sahara. Scientists have figured out the reason is a massive underground rock formation from millions of years ago. The Nile has served as the most important water highway for civilizations through centuries, but it has some pretty dangerous inhabitants, like crocodiles that grow to be 20 feet long, which is slightly more than the height of an average giraffe. These bad guys can reach a speed of 30 miles per hour on land and take the lives of a couple hundred people every year. Hippopotamuses that also live here sometimes go after boats, and venomous snakes like the black mamba and the Egyptian cobra add to the mix. One of the most dangerous creatures on the Nile is the mosquito, as they carry around all sorts of diseases that affect hundreds of thousands of people. The Brahmaputra River in Asia carries waters from the mighty Himalayas. When the snows in the mountains melt, the river floods massively, causing landslides, displacing millions of people, and taking the lives of hundreds of animals in the nearby national parks. Such floods are also common during the monsoon season in India, from June to October, with heavy rains. The course of the Brahmaputra River is changed incredibly over the past 2.5 centuries. Erosion is another danger it's hiding. The banks of the river are mostly made of weak cohesive sand and silt, and even though the erosion rate has gone down, it is still the reason a lot of people lose their land and get displaced. The Brahmaputra is one of the few rivers in the world that has a tidal bore. That's a strong tidal wave that pushes up the river against the current where a river empties into an ocean or sea. And there you have it.
There's a monster hiding in the remote forests, swamps, and rivers of the Congo Basin in Central Africa. It has a long neck, looks like a dinosaur, and is the size of an elephant, or maybe a hippo at least. That's what people who claim to have seen it say. It should have gone extinct millions of years ago, but this Congo's version of the Loch Ness Monster somehow survived. This creature is the Mokele Mbembe, which means one who stops the flow of rivers, and more folks are saying they've seen it lately. European explorers first heard the stories of this creature from the people living near the Congo River in the early 1900s. A German captain even included a description of the monster in his official report from his expedition. The locals told him the animal was of a brownish-gray color with smooth skin, a very flexible neck, and only one long tooth that could be a horn. Some of them mentioned a long, muscular tail, like that of an alligator. They also said that the creature lived in the caves, but climbed the shores even in the daytime to find some plants to eat. Locals also believed its favorite snack was a kind of liana with large white blossoms. Some of them even showed the German captain some fresh path the monster left leading next to those plants. And they warned him that Mokele Mbembe definitely didn't like humans and took down any canoe that would sail nearby. Dinosaurs were a real hit in pop culture in the 1910s, and several newspapers in Europe and North America wrote about the dino-like monster from Africa back then. In the later years, several expeditions traveled to the Congo Basin to search for Mokele Mbembe or interview claimed witnesses. They did not find any direct physical evidence, but collected many stories. One zoologist in the 1980s said he took a film of Mokele Mbembe, but the footage did not develop properly. Stories and movies like Jurassic Park have kept the dream alive that dinosaurs might still be hiding somewhere in deep forests. At some point, people stopped reporting sightings of the creature as often, so it almost became a forgotten legend. But it all changed recently, as many people claim to have witnessed the mythical monster with their own eyes. Cryptozoologists, those fans of mysterious creatures, believe it could be a dinosaur that, for some reason, didn't go extinct, related to a brachiosaurus or a diplodocus. This idea comes from how people describe seeing the creature, with a super long neck, a huge body, and a tiny head. They think it might have stayed hidden in the deep forests of Africa all this time. But scientists say that if it really were the last living dinosaur, we would have found some real proof by now, like a photo or bones or something showing it walking around the Congo Basin. Some expeditions that are trying to find proof the monster is real have even used sonar technology to scan the murky waters of Central African rivers and lakes in search of any large, unidentified creatures. Some people even narrowed down the monster's location to a specific remote lake, surrounded by untouched jungle in the swamps. So far, the search for evidence hasn't been successful. The explanation behind all the sightings of the Mokele Mbembe could be the changing ecosystem. More and more human settlements are moving into the huge Congo Basin rainforest. People aren't used to seeing large animals that live in the forest, so they believe they have witnessed the mysterious creature from their folklore. The human brain often fills in the gaps in something we don't know and uses imagination to explain it, especially if there's a ready-made version that everyone's heard of. But still, we can't completely rule out the possibility that there are some new, unknown species of animals hiding in the Congo forests. Maybe just not a missing dinosaur. Another legend, this time Mongolian, says there's a giant worm living deep in the Gobi Desert. Yep, similar to the monster you've seen in Dune. The creature, which is supposedly up to 6 feet long, can spit acid that could melt anything and shoot electricity. They say it spends most of its days hiding underneath the sandy dunes, but likes to come out during the wetter months of June and July. The people in the West first found out about the megaworm of the Gobi Desert thanks to an American paleontologist, Roy Chapman Andrews. This brave man was probably the inspiration for Indiana Jones. In 1926, he wrote about the creature in his book. At the meeting with Mongolian leaders, Andrews heard detailed descriptions of the creature, even though none of them had ever seen it themselves. One of them said it looked like a sausage that was about 2 feet long with no head or legs. According to him, the worm was so poisonous that just touching it could instantly take your life, and it lived in the loneliest parts of the Gobi Desert. Andrews didn't think the creature was real, but he shared these stories again in another book. And then, stories of the monster spread around the world. In some of them, it's only 1 foot long. In others, it's as large as a human. Some say it looks like a snake, and some describe it as a caterpillar. Some people claim it has wings and can fly, and others think it could be a supernatural evil being without a body. The color of the creature also remains a subject of debate. It could be white-gray, brown, or even bright red. The stories of witnesses are probably so different because the creature doesn't even exist. In 1983, one scientist who was visiting the region heard that an old man had managed to finally catch the mysterious worm. He also found out there was a nest nearby and decided to risk it all and see it. But instead of a scary monster, there was a tartar sand boa inside. Luckily for the scientist, this snake is non-venomous, but it does have gray-brown scales and could match the description of the giant worm. When he showed it to the locals, supposedly all of them said it was the monster they had seen. Big expeditions from America, Britain, and New Zealand came to the Gobi Desert to try and find the creature. Many other adventurers came from all around the world on their own, but found no evidence the monster was real. But many Mongolians are sure the death worm is no fantasy. If you don't believe there's a monster in the Gobi Desert, how about one in Lake Worth in Texas? According to local folklore, there's a part human, part goat creature with scales and long clawed fingers hiding there. It all started back in July 1969, when locals claimed to have spotted this mysterious creature roaming around. The newspapers loved the story and started reporting about new sightings. One article said that the monster jumped out of a tree and landed on some guy's car. Another report claimed that the Lake Worth monster decided to throw an automobile tire at a group of people. Someone even managed to take a photo of the creature, and the newspapers published it. Locals started flocking to the lake at night, hoping to catch a glimpse of the creature, but no one could find any evidence it was real after all. The author of the monster's photograph later said it was most likely someone's prank, because the creature really wanted to be seen. Then, a reporter from the local newspaper received an anonymous letter saying that it was 3 high school students who decided to dress up and scare people. Even despite this, some cryptozoologists think it could have been an undiscovered primate species that walks on 2 legs. We don't know if the Worth monster is real, but it does one good thing and brings together the local community. Every year since 2009, they throw the Lake Worth Monster Bash.
So imagine stumbling upon a creature so huge it could dwarf even the largest known marine animals today. Scientists discovered the fossils of this beast on England's coast and believe it once ruled the waves. The new species was named Ichthyotitan severnensis, but thankfully for me, scientists nicknamed it the Little Stock Monster. Its estimated lengths range from 72 to 85 feet long, almost as big as a blue whale. Megalodon can't even compare to this. It was only about 60 feet long. And what's crazy is that this fossil we found wasn't even an adult, so who knows what their actual size was. The first piece of the Little Stock Monster was discovered in 2016 in the Westbury Formation. Researchers found a 3-foot-long jaw part that belonged to an unknown species. For years, this single fragment had been driving them crazy because they had no idea what that animal was. Then, in 2020, a miracle happened, of sorts. A father with his 11-year-old daughter found the second piece of fossil on a beach. This discovery led to more findings. Finally, in 2022, the last piece of the literal jaw puzzle was found, buried along the Somerset coast. This leviathan belonged to the Shastasaurid family. Both the Little Stock Monster and other Shastasaurids had one ancestor, so all the species in this family are super similar to each other. For example, all of them were the largest marine reptiles ever to exist. Although our little stock monster is much larger, most Shastasaurids could grow up to only 69 feet long, and it's possible that the little stock monster, when fully grown, would reach up to 100 feet or even more. Both of their bodies were just perfect for cruising the ancient seas. These marine titans were elegant and slender, with an elongated snout. Other marine animals at the time were smaller and looked more like dolphins. Shastasaurids had long paddle-like limbs adapted for efficient swimming. Their skulls show large eye sockets, which means they had excellent vision. If you were in the ocean, no matter what time it was or where you were hiding, they could spot you. They were also incredibly fast and could dive to great depths. Of course, all these things made them the most terrifying predators. They ate pretty much everything, including fish and squid, and you if you were there. They probably captured their prey like whales, opened their huge mouths, and literally sucked the fish in. What made the little stock monster especially scary is that it wins in the jaw competition. For other Shastasaurids, their jaws were a bit weaker, so they hunted smaller fish, kind of like today's orcas. They required vast amounts of food. This shows us that the Earth's Triassic oceans had rich, productive food webs. But the little stock monster has this unique feature. It could open its jaw almost 90 degrees upwards. It also had tons of powerful muscles around. Its jaws were horrifyingly strong. So while others were hunting some squids, the little stock monster probably hunted large fish and even other marine reptiles. Fossils of Shastasaurids have been found everywhere in the world, from North America to Asia. This means that these creatures dominated and terrorized the oceans for millions of years, although even they weren't completely safe from scavengers. And that's exactly why we struggle to find these fossils now. Scavengers didn't leave any remnants of them. So, while we have some fossils of this marine family, they mostly remain a mystery for us. They lived in the oceans about 200 million years ago, in the late Triassic period. The Earth looked completely different back then. All continents were united in one Pangaea, a huge landmass. Some parts of this supercontinent were covered with lush conifer forests, while others were dry deserts and open prairies. It was before the famous Jurassic period, but there were already first pterosaurs and amphibians. It seems like those monsters were crazy resilient. The Triassic period was super unstable, but they survived through many changes in the environment. Well, until the last one. The Triassic extinction came out of nowhere. It was one of the Earth's Big Five extinction events. It wiped out almost all species on the planet, including these leviathans. It's still not clear what happened exactly, but it looks like there was a huge tectonic activity. Volcanoes in the oceans were going crazy back then. These massive volcanic eruptions have probably altered the climate and ocean chemistry, leading to the extinction of many species. Scientists have a theory that it might have happened because there was a rain of comets flying to our planet from the Oort cloud. This likely happens about every 200 million years or so. I wasn't around then, so I'm just guessing here. In any case, after the extinction, the Earth took some time to recover. Then it entered the famous Jurassic period. More terrifying sea monsters were on the way. One of them left us a colossal skull. This fossil is 150 million years old, and it also belonged to a sea beast from Jurassic times. They called it the Sea Rex. The name is very fitting. This monster could have broken a car in half with one bite. It was also discovered accidentally. A fossil enthusiast was walking along the Jurassic coast. This place is famous for having tons of ancient fossils, all because of the erosion and stormy weather. Typically, people find small spiral fossils here. However, this time, he discovered a giant sea monster fossil. Excited, he contacted scientists. They arrived at the spot right away and then had to carefully climb down a cliff to search for the rest of the skull. This fragment alone is 6.5 feet long. Turns out, it's a newly discovered species of pliosaurs, giant predators of the ancient seas. Pliosaurs were among the largest marine predators ever. Some of them grew up to 40 feet long. They used their huge teeth to snatch and devour prey, including other reptiles. Well, at least those creatures are far gone. But what about the horrors that still live in our oceans? Recently, biologists discovered the world's longest animal, the one that's still alive to this day. They found it off Australia's coast, on the Gascoyne coast. a very mysterious and unexplored place. There, underwater vehicles stumbled upon a frightening 150-foot-long siphonophore. That's twice as long as many blue whales and 3 times as long as a humpback whale. Doesn't it kind of look like one of those toy string worms? But this creature isn't friendly at all. It's a string-like deep-sea predator. What's even more scary is that this isn't actually one creature. It's a colony of small clones working together as one. Basically, collective consciousness. Ooh, Borg. Together, they stretch out like a single long string in the water. This creature might be the longest siphonophore ever found, and it was discovered at a depth of around 2,000 feet. Siphonophores, similar to jellyfish, capture their prey by dangling stinging tentacles in the water. When their tentacles touch small crustaceans and fish, they get paralyzed, and then they're reeled up to the colony's body. Expeditions to Western Australia's underwater canyons were definitely worth it. Together with that siphonophore, scientists have discovered up to 30 potential new marine species. Among them were a new octopus or squid, a long-tailed sea cucumber, glass sponges, and giant hyroids, colonies of animals resembling upside-down jellyfish. None of them have been seen before in Australia, but most of them weren't as scary as the one that was recently discovered in the Gulf of Mexico. This creature is straight out of a sci-fi thriller, a 26-foot-long manga pinna squid or bigfin squid. It was discovered near an offshore oil rig at a depth of more than 7,800 feet. It has incredibly long elastic tentacles, which can be 15 to 20 times longer than its body. It holds them at right angles to its body, making it look even creepier, almost as if it has elbows. And yes, it's another deep-sea predator. These 10 tentacles probably help the squid trap their prey and drag it onto the seafloor. We barely know anything about this extraterrestrial-looking creature because they're very hard to find and study. And if you think their tentacles are awful, just check out these creatures with 20 arms. This thing looks like a facehugger. This new species is lurking in the frozen depths of Antarctica. Experts were searching for cryptic sea animals known as Promachocrinus, or Antarctic feather stars. They're kind of similar to starfish and sea cucumbers, but have an otherworldly appearance and can live up to 6,500 feet below the surface. It's called the Antarctic strawberry feather star. Despite its pretty name, its appearance is anything but cute. It has a bizarre strawberry-like body from which 20 spindly arms branch off. Its coloring ranges from purple to dark reddish, and the arms all have different lengths and thickness. Who knows how many more of such scary creatures we'll discover in the future.
You're strapped in a boat cruising down the Amazon River with the sun scorching hot. As you check out your map, your boat starts rocking back and forth. The water is starting to get more intense, so you hang on for dear life. You tuck your map in your pocket and try to take control of your boat. You strike some jagged rocks and duck low to avoid tree branches. Your boat strikes a large rock out of nowhere and capsizes. You're swimming in the murky green water. While you're trying your best to get ashore, your boat gets washed away. Underneath the water lies a whole new world of bizarre and dangerous animals. Candiru fish are snake-like creatures that can grow up to 16 inches long. Arapimus can weigh more than an adult male and are taller than most basketball players. They're the biggest freshwater fish in South America. They have a hybrid gill system that forces them to pop up to the surface every 5 to 15 minutes to breathe in oxygen for their large swim bladder. You swim out of the raging water and dry yourself off. Oh no, your map is completely soaked. There's no way you can get to your destination without it. You venture into the thick rainforest, shoving the branches and leaves away. As you get deeper, you notice something on a tree. It's barely moving, but it's got sharp claws and a raggedy coat. It stretches its arm to another branch and tries to pull itself up, ever so slowly. Sloths sleep more than half their days and only head down from trees once a week. They're so motionless, they sometimes grow algae and moss on their fur. The rainforest gets denser with each step until there's barely any sunlight illuminating the path in front of you. You notice a figure following you. With every branch you step on, you can hear a faint sound right next to you creeping around. You start walking a bit faster, and the sound catches up with you. You make it out of the dense part and tread along a narrow path until you reach a cliff. You can't walk normally here, so you pin against the wall and walk sideways to cross the hills. You slowly move across with the river 30 feet below you. You move your right foot, and some rocks fall into the river. You keep going and misstep. You're about to fall, but you hold on to a large tree branch and pull yourself up. You notice a couple of colorful poison frogs inches away from your fingers. Touching any of these frogs can be extremely dangerous and harmful, despite their amazing color patterns. The golden poison frog is one of the most poisonous animals in the world. One of them hops right next to you, so you let go of the branch and fall back in the river. The river is washing you down until you reach a calm current. Underneath you is a swarm of piranhas swimming with their sharp teeth. The red color on their skin is unmistakable, so you swim off like an Olympic athlete. Piranhas will eat anything that gets in their way, no matter the size. You grip onto a log and climb up a small rock to catch your breath. There's a huge electric eel underneath the rock. Despite their name, they're more related to catfish than eels. They use their powerful 600 volts of electricity to defend themselves and catch food. You're stuck, unless you're like the common basilisk that can run on the water like a jet ski. These incredible lizards have special webbing on their toes and can run the distance of a basketball court. You hop on a bunch of rocks until you reach the land. You continue walking along the riverbank until you come across a moving rock. You rub your eyes and see it moving again. It's a dinosaur-looking turtle that resembles a crocodile with armor. The mata mata is a freshwater turtle that disguises itself with its surroundings to catch prey. Their heads stretch longer than their bodies. You shimmy your way past it and continue. You head back into the rainforest and find a spot to rest. Wait, there are giant ants everywhere. They're the biggest ants in the world and can produce one of the most painful stings out there, even comparable to a wasp's sting. You immediately get up and find another place to rest. As you continue walking along, you notice the same feeling of something following you. You can hear some leaves rustling, but it's getting dark and there's no way of telling. You find a nice little spot to build a campfire and catch some Z's. But in the Amazon, everything is a threat. Except for those cute capybaras wandering around. They live in groups next to water sources. They're also the biggest rodents in the world. You don't need to worry about them if you're stuck in the middle of the Amazon rainforest. Suddenly, you feel something slithering up next to you. You look down and see a massive green anaconda just about to constrict you. They are the heaviest snakes in the world and can grow up to 20 feet long and have a huge appetite. You get up and sprint your way out of there. All right, you found a decent cave to crash in. It's daytime again, and you're still alive. You continue walking along the rainforest. You were able to find some breakfast to boost your energy for the rest of the day. You spot something on a tree that looks like a branch, but it's actually a potu, a master of disguise that can spend days motionless on broken tree branches. These bizarre birds use those branches as their permanent home, where they lay their eggs and chill all day. You continue your way through the rainforest and see a Brazilian wandering spider crawling on a tree branch right in front of you. 8 of these species can be found in the Amazon area. They are some of the most aggressive and venomous spiders out there. So, you make a big detour and walk away from it. You feel someone walking next to you again, but you still can't figure out what it is. You see a steep cliff with a waterfall hitting a large lake ahead of you. Looks peaceful, until you see a team of black caimans gathering around the shore. They're the biggest predators in the whole Amazon ecosystem and feed on anything that moves. It's a good thing you're on high ground, otherwise, whoa! You slip and fall down the river, right on the deep end. So far, no caiman spotted you. You swim underwater and try to get to the opposite end of where the reptiles are. As you climb out and dry yourself off, you notice some large black spots on you. You try pulling them off, but they've latched on pretty hard. The Amazon giant leech finds its target by tracking movement and shadow. Once they attach themselves to the skin, it's extremely difficult to extract them. The best way to do so is to slide your finger next to its mouth and pull it off slowly. Ugh. You manage to get them off your body and see that the caimans are swimming towards you. You're pinned to the wall with the lake of hungry reptiles approaching. Suddenly, a pink dolphin jumps out of the water and splashes all over them. They can grow larger than humans and are the celebrities of the Amazon. Scientists think they get their color from the blood capillaries on their skin. The Amazon even has bull sharks swimming around. These carnivorous giant fish are threatening to humans and can swim in both saltwater and freshwater. These sharks prey on anything within their reach, including other sharks. The dolphin distracted the caimans, so you climb up the cliff and try to find the best way to escape. Opened jaws waiting for you to fall into the pit are right below you. You're lucky enough to escape to the top, but as your arms pull you up, the first thing that you see is a jaguar looking straight at you. It's the creature that's been following you this whole time. You get up while it starts circling you, timing its strike. You know that you can't take on a jaguar, nor can you outrun it, so you grab a large tree branch from the ground to defend yourself. It jumps at you, but you duck down in time. The jaguar lands in the water far away from the caiman crocs. It's a good thing these large kitties are excellent swimmers. You pick yourself up and continue. And to your surprise, you find your boat again. You fix it up and sail your way out of the Amazon. Whew!
Many terrifying animals live deep beyond the waves, like this vampire squid living 3,000 feet below the surface in almost complete darkness. This animal has a cloak, like a vampire's. That's why it's called the vampire squid. Deep down at the bottom, it can't use ink to defend itself. So this animal has developed an unusual tactic. It glows slightly to scare away predators. If this tactic fails, the vampire squid can turn its body inside out, revealing tiny spikes. When you translate its scientific name, Vampiroteuthis infernalis, it literally means vampire squid from the nether. Despite its terrifying looks, it's a harmless ocean animal. This previous creature was not from space, but this object definitely is. Before Elon Musk found a way to reuse rockets, NASA would simply drop old ones after launching astronauts into space, most of the time in the ocean or deserts. In 2012, Jeff Bezos launched a mission to find the Apollo 11 rocket. They found it by using sonar, but it was in terrible condition. It was sitting on the bottom of the ocean, not far from the predicted site. They were able to rescue the engine and reconstruct 2 of them. The most famous lost city is Atlantis, but sadly, we still haven't discovered it. However, Heraklion was also just a myth until one British pilot saw something that looked like a city while flying over the Mediterranean Sea. He reported it, and 60 years later, a group of divers went there. They were shocked when they found an entire city underwater. It was loaded with artifacts that could tell us a lot about the history of the place. Now it's one of the best underwater archaeological sites in the world. It's believed that the rising sea caused the whole city to go underwater. The Titanic sank in 1912. The wreck was claimed to be officially discovered 74 years later. In reality, though, a fisherman found the Titanic 8 years earlier while fishing in the Atlantic Ocean. He was pulling out his net when he spotted a head stuck in it. Luckily, it was just a doll's head. Years later, after the fisher had passed away, his son sold the doll to a doll collector. She did a lot of digging and research on every person who had a porcelain toy on the Titanic. She found the owner of the doll. Ava Hart was on the Titanic and had a doll with her. Ava survived the catastrophe by a miracle, but her toy didn't. Hart even wrote about the doll in her journal, and every detail matched the toy found by the fisherman. The tripod fish lives deep in the abyssal zone, around 20,000 feet below the surface. It's adapted to such immense depths and uses its tripod fins to stay still on the bottom. This creature doesn't have big eyes, but even if it did, these eyes would be useless in the darkness. Instead, the tripod fish uses its fins like antennas to detect any movement in the water. This creature doesn't have much luck when it comes to its love life, so it had to develop unique tactics to reproduce. One fish can be both male and female. The next bizarre creature is the lizardfish. It has tons of razor-sharp teeth, a huge mouth, and really big eyes, which it uses for hunting. All this makes the animal look freaky. The lizardfish lives at depths of around 11,000 feet in the midnight zone, where there is zero light. This freak of nature basically eats everything it can fit inside its mouth, from small fish to other lizardfish. On the other hand, when they see other reptile fish, they probably fall in love instead, because finding mates at those depths is not an easy task. Like the tripod fish, the lizardfish can be both male and female at the same time. When you think of a river, you usually picture it on land. Still, nature is quite unpredictable, and it created a river flowing under the ocean in California. It's running at a depth of around 2 miles. This river has everything that an ordinary river has: sunken logs, trees, and rocks. And despite its uniqueness, it's not the only one in the world. There are also others in the Amazon and Greenland. A terrifying creature was discovered near Angola's coast by a remote operating vehicle. It looks like it doesn't have a head or a body. It was sitting at a depth of around 4,350 feet below the surface. After doing research, scientists concluded it wasn't anything from a sci-fi movie. It was just a cluster of siphonophores stuck together. In 2015, some random guy was diving in Caesarea, and something shiny caught his eye. He reached out, grabbed it, and realized it was a gold coin. After that, he examined the bottom and found out that there were many more. He reported the incident to the local authorities, and they concluded that he had found Arabic treasure. The coins were made of solid 24-karat gold and were a few thousand years old, but due to the perfect salinity and temperature, they looked brand new. The coins belonged to a ship carrying cargo. It was caught up in a storm and unfortunately sank. One of the weirdest things ever discovered was found in the Baltic Sea. It's an anomaly that looks as if it was created by a different civilization. It was discovered by Swedish researchers, and they basically had no idea what it was. They had to ask tons of other scientists for their opinions. When you look at this formation from above, it's 200 feet long and looks exactly like a fallen spaceship. It's hard to believe that it's a natural formation, but spoiler alert, it's totally made by nature because the Baltic Sea has gone through many erosions throughout history. Most likely, the bizarre formation is the result of these processes. A group of divers in Madagascar were shocked when they found this 7-foot monstrosity of a knife on the seafloor. The speculation started immediately, and many said that the knife was from some giants that had fought megalodons and lived on Earth thousands and thousands of years ago. That could make a nice story, but the knife is most likely a movie prop that was lost at sea. One of the ocean's most bizarre animals is the frilled shark. It's believed that this fish is the reason for all those sea serpent stories that sea explorers of the past wrote about. These animals live pretty deep in the ocean, but sometimes they can be seen in shallow waters. It's super rare, but possible. The frilled shark has a big mouth sporting around 300 teeth. It also has a long body that looks like a lizard's, and it is truly a unique species of shark. Its prey can be half of its size because this shark's stomach is like that of a snake, and it can swallow huge fish or crustaceans. Spotting a few worms in your garden is no big deal, but after seeing a 26-foot long one in the ocean, you will make your wetsuit a little wetter. This worm is super rare, and it's completely harmless to humans. It's actually not a giant worm. It's a cluster of zooids that are stuck together in a worm-shaped formation. They usually only eat plankton, bacteria, and other tiny things that can be found in the ocean. Probably the scariest thing in the ocean that is 100% real is the Magna Pinna, which can be found at crazy depths of 20,000 feet below the surface. This monster looks like an underwater Slender Man, but it's just a squid with really long tentacles that can reach a terrifying size of 8 feet. This guy has only been seen a few times, and basically, we don't know much about this creature so far. 75 million years ago, North America was full of scary dinos, both walking and flying, and insects the size of birds. But the biggest predator there was something way scarier, a crocodile so massive it could swallow dinosaurs whole. This beast was roughly the length of a school bus, weighed more than 5 tons, and had teeth the size of bananas. Its name was Dinosuchus, which literally means terrible crocodile. And trust me, it lived up to that name. Scientists have found its fossils all across North America, from Mexico to Texas to New Jersey and Montana. It means this monster could live pretty much anywhere it wanted. It wasn't picky. It roamed rivers, swamps, and even coastlines. And when it was hungry, anything that moved was fair game. Fossilized dinosaur bones show massive bite marks matching its jaw pattern. So yes, it actually took down dinosaurs. What's even crazier is its bite force. Based on skull reconstructions, scientists estimate it could crush bones with more power than T-Rex. So if a T-Rex ever got close to the water, it might have ended up as lunch. But Dinosuchus wasn't just a bigger and meaner version of today's crocodiles. It was more closely related to alligators. Recent studies show that it actually belonged to an ancient branch of crocodilians that split off before the ancestors of modern alligators and crocodiles.
It was like that weird cousin in your family tree who doesn't quite fit in, but somehow looks like everyone. It had traits from both groups, like salt glands that helped it survive in both freshwater and saltwater. That's rare because most crocs today can't handle salty environments for long. This feature might have been its secret superpower. Around that time, North America was divided by a massive inland sea called the Western Interior Seaway. It stretched from the Arctic Ocean down to the Gulf of Mexico. Dinosuchus could travel across it, sneaking along the coasts and striking anywhere there was food. Still, scientists argue about its favorite hangout spot. Some say it mostly lived in rivers and swamps, and the fossils found near the coast just happened to be preserved better there. Others think it really did patrol the ancient shoreline, waiting for dinosaurs that wandered too close. Either way, this reptile ruled its world, and the climate of its time helped it thrive. The late Cretaceous was a warm, humid idyll filled with wetlands, forests, and endless food sources. Giant turtles, fish the size of cars, and whole herds of herbivorous dinosaurs gave Dinosuchus an all-you-can-eat buffet. As long as the ecosystem stayed stable, it could keep getting bigger and bigger, and it did. Throughout Earth's history, huge crocodiles have evolved again and again. It's like nature's favorite blueprint for apex predator. Even today, Nile crocs and saltwater crocs are living proof that this ancient design still works perfectly. Some scientists even joke that crocodiles are basically dinosaurs that decided to chill and wait it out. They survived mass extinctions while most other big reptiles vanished. Dinosuchus wasn't so lucky and went extinct around 73 million years ago, most likely because the environment changed and its food sources dwindled. But the ocean is still full of mysteries. Maybe some gigantic croc-like beasts are still lurking out there. And while we're guessing, let's look at some other prehistoric creatures that make scientists rewrite what they thought we knew about life on Earth. First up, we have the Dragon of Death. Don't even make me pronounce its full name, Thanatosdracon amaru. Scientists found its bones in western Argentina, in formation layers called the Plotier Formation from about 86 million years ago, the late Cretaceous. This creature wasn't just big, it was gigantic for a flying reptile. Judging by some of its bones, it has a wingspan somewhere between 23 and 30 feet. That's like a small plane wing outstretched. It's officially one of the largest pterosaurs ever discovered in South America. Its fossils are pretty well preserved, including parts that are usually squishy and fragile in flying reptiles like vertebrae and limb bones. This gives scientists clues not just about how it moved, but about what ecosystems were like back then. Looks like it enjoyed marshy floodplains, big open skies, and plenty of prey below. Our dragon likely used its size to its advantage, either going after small dinosaurs or scavenging. The fact that this massive creature managed to evolve wings capable of flight is just crazy. Next, we've got a creature that looks like a mix of a dino and a skunk to me, Stegosaurus elengasen. Scientists found fossils of this cool guy in southern Chile among rocks deposited about 75 million years ago. The thing that hits you first, let's hope, not literally, is its tail. Instead of the usual spikes or clubs you get in other armored dinos like ankylosaurs, Stegosaurus had a flat blade-like tail made from fused bones. It looked almost like a weird paddle or frond. Scientists compare it to Aztec ammunition because of that blade structure across the tail's rear half. It wasn't huge, only about 6.5 feet long, but what it lacked in size it made up for in weirdness and cleverness. Its body had armor plates, protective skin scutes, and a skull structure showing features of different dinos. So it was kind of a hybrid in style, which got paleontologists rewriting some of the family trees of armored dinosaurs. Also, the fossil is unusually complete, about 80%, which is rare because armor bones are often damaged or missing. This is super useful for science because it shows us how armor evolved, especially in southern continents. And you definitely need to meet our next hero, a truly bizarre marine reptile that once patrolled the waters of what's now Wyoming, Serpent. This creature was part crocodile, part sea monster, and 100% nightmare fuel. Scientists first found its fossils over 25 years ago, but they only recently managed to piece together enough of its remains to truly understand it. It had a super long neck, which was normal for plesiosaurs, and a croc-like skull and body. Most fossil books would tell you these traits shouldn't exist in the same animal. So this guy was a stunning exception. Paleontologists have found its lower jaw, a large portion of its skull, neck vertebrae, tail, and ribs. So they were able to reconstruct not just what it looked like, but how it likely moved, swam, and hunted. About 35% of its body is preserved, which is not so often for marine reptiles, and it lets scientists learn a lot about its lifestyle. With its long neck and the power of a crocodile, plus a super combo of speed, reach, and bite, this guy was most likely a top predator of its time. Last but not least, we have this cool dino, Duonicus tsokhtbatari, that lived in Mongolia's Gobi Desert around 90 to 95 million years ago during the Cretaceous period. It wasn't a meat-eater like T-Rex, but more of a plant muncher. It grew to about 10 feet long, roughly the size of a tall adult human lying down, and weighed around 575 pounds. Pretty hefty for a leaf-eater. The craziest thing about this heavy guy was its hands. It only had 2 fingers on each hand, and each finger carried a giant curved claw about a foot long, covered in keratin, the same stuff your nails are made of. That keratin actually added over 40% to the claw's length, which is super rare to see preserved in fossils. Because of that, scientists can actually study the full shape and structure of the claw, not just the bone. Its hands weren't just for show, though. We can see fused wrist bones and stiff joints in the fossil, which means it could grab and pull down branches to eat leaves. So, having fewer fingers could actually be a bonus if your goal is to reach and rip down vegetation. It's a really cool example of how dinosaurs adapted in weird and specific ways to survive.
Dinosaurs, big ancient bugs, creepy spiders, and scary insects are all cute animals compared to the monsters that lived on Earth about 500 million years ago. For example, here's a creature that swam in the water like a stingray and had 3 eyes. Its mouth was like a pencil sharpener. 2 long claws with forked tips like pincers protruded from its head, and its gills were somewhere in the back. This is not a thing from a sci-fi movie. This is Mosaura. Its remains are preserved in excellent condition. Let's look at it more closely and study other similar monsters. The Cambrian Explosion. Remember this name. This period is also called the Biological Big Bang, the time when a huge number of different living creatures began to appear in the ocean, large, small, and tiny. The ancestors of almost all modern animal groups were most likely born during the Cambrian Explosion, which lasted from 541 to 485 million years ago. It was a time when the first truly effective and terrifying predators appeared on Earth. One of them was Mosaura. It's only the size of an index finger, but you would never want to meet such a creature while swimming in the sea. It's scary to imagine what it could do with its pencil sharpener-shaped mouth. And you probably wouldn't be able to hide from it because, come on, it had 2 eyes on the sides and 1 big eye on its forehead. Mosaura belonged to a group of arthropods. Scientists called it a sea moth since it reminded them of a moth. This thing used a flap-like apparatus similar to wings to float in the water like a stingray. This monster was quite creepy, but its appearance may seem familiar because it's a distant relative of modern spiders, crabs, centipedes, and moths. Scientists found several 506 million-year-old Mosaura fossils, but unlike many other similar finds, these ones have been preserved in excellent condition. The found fossils showed sharp claws, a toothy jaw, and large gills in the tail section. Some parts of the fossil were so clear that they revealed the details of the creature's internal anatomy, including parts of its nervous and circulatory systems and digestive tract. It had jointed limbs like those of modern insects and crustaceans. When this monster swam in the sea, it probably grabbed its prey with long spiked claws sticking out of its head. Many Mosaura relatives have claws covered with multiple spikes, which help them grab food. But that ancient creature had smooth claws forked at the tips. That is, it grabbed the prey with those tongs, using them like chopsticks, and then brought it to its mouth. Of course, this is an assumption, and nobody saw how this creature actually did it. Unlike many other similar animals, Mosaura's posterior segmented body was studded with gills. Scientists don't know why this was necessary, but they assume that such an unusual breathing system helped to adapt to an environment with low oxygen content. Perhaps Mosaura led a very active reproductive lifestyle that required high oxygen consumption. Creepy, dangerous, and reproducing fast. An excellent set of qualities for one of the most dangerous predators of antiquity. But what did Mosaura eat? It probably caught different types of worms and small arthropods. It's nice to think that this monster lived so long ago and was so small. But what if this creature was the size of a shark and was swimming in the ocean these days? Perhaps it would become a dominant dweller and people would swim much less along the coast. Mosaura lived in the water but was discovered in the Burgess Shale Rock Formation in the Canadian Rockies. Many mountains on Earth were once the seabed inhabited by strange creatures. One of them was Opabinia. It had 5 eyes, a mouth facing backward, a long trunk and claws instead of a nose. Wait, what? It's too strange even for science fiction, even for outer space. In its eccentricity, Opabinia was perhaps the loneliest creature on Earth. Scientists couldn't find another species that would be similar to this individual until recently. Meet Utaurora. It seems to belong to the same species as Opabinia. Its inch-long body was divided into 14 to 15 furrows. Each of them ended in a pointed flap. Opabinia had the same body, but it's unlikely that both monsters were friends. The difference between their timelines was several million years. It's hard to imagine why these monsters needed such strange body structures. Why haven't modern filmmakers used the design of those animals to create cool space monsters yet? Okay, they were creepy creatures, but what about weird and kinda useless ones? Scientists have discovered Su, a legless creature with no head turned inside out. Huh? This 444-million-year-old creature was found in South Africa, north of Cape Town. They called it Su after the discoverer's mother. In fact, it's some kind of new arthropod species that may have lived in low-oxygen waters. This creature was turned inside out, and the outer shell with the legs and head was lost. Thanks to mineralization, muscles, tendons, and even Su's intestines were preserved on the fossil. It's a great success to find such detailed remains of an ancient creature. However, scientists still can't determine the evolutionary history of this species. They're sure that it was a primitive marine arthropod. Okay, we can see that 500 million years ago, Earth was filled with creepy monsters, which fortunately are now extinct. But what about trees? Were they the same as we see now? Or was there something else? Something creepy? Oh yeah. Scientists have discovered a new kind of living organism similar to a tree or a mushroom. It was gigantic and had a very minimalistic design. Meet the Prototaxites. It's basically just a big stick with a round end poking out of the ground. It was smooth, didn't have the usual tree bark, and looked more like a mushroom without a cap. But scientists have recently found out that it wasn't a mushroom at all. Prototaxites probably belonged to a previously unknown branch of life. Prototaxites is considered to be the first giant organism in the history of the planet that lived on land. It existed about 420 to 375 million years ago during the Devonian period. It was the time when plants began to spread across dry land, forming large forests. Over time, they began to grow leaves and form roots in the ground. Then, the first seed plants appeared. The real colonization of land began. The first arthropods, such as centipedes, arachnids, and other unpleasant creatures, began to walk among those forests. Meanwhile, the water was filled with a huge biodiversity. There was a giant supercontinent on the planet, and smaller parts began to break off it. During this period, Prototaxites towered over the land. Some of these things reached 26 feet high and 3 feet wide. It's like a 3-story house and as thick as a palm tree. But what was it? A plant? A mushroom? Algae, perhaps? Scientists discovered them in the middle of the 19th century, but only in 2007 did they conduct chemical analysis. Research showed that it was most likely a giant mushroom, but in 2025, scientists refuted this conclusion. It turns out this may have been an unknown life form that existed separately from the kingdom of fungi, animals, plants, and protists. Scientists noticed that the inner part of Prototaxites consisted of a number of tubes. There are similar tubes inside mushrooms, but the tubes of that ancient living thing branched and joined differently. They even had a different chemical composition. The main building block of mushrooms is chitin, but the Prototaxites contained chemicals similar to lignin, a substance found in the bark of trees and other plants, and its anatomy differs from the structure of any other organism known to us. What were they doing on Earth? Just chilled and enjoyed the bloom of life? Did they produce some kind of fruit, like a banana with eyes and claws? Scientists don't know. What if it was something that was brought to Earth from outer space? What if they were flowers planted by another civilization? What do you think?
What's the scariest predator under the ocean? The crocodile? Huh, I don't think so. Loch Ness Monster? Please, it never existed. How about the Kronosaurus? Well, it is extinct, but you might be onto something. Let's take a look at what it'd be like if these creatures were still around today. First things first, what on earth was it? The Kronosaurus was a marine carnivore that lived in the cool, high-latitude Eromanga Sea. It covered vast areas of inland Australia between 90 and 120 million years ago, during the early Cretaceous period. Near-complete fossils of the creature were also found near Colombia, which is a country that has a noted connection to prehistoric reptiles and turtles. This fact makes it extremely possible that the monster I'm about to describe existed worldwide. You might have heard saurus and thought, oh, it's a dinosaur. But these were actually reptiles. They were the largest member of the Pleosauroidea family, referred to as plesiosaurs. Fossil evidence suggests they weighed over 20,000 pounds and were roughly 30 feet in length. Just to put that in perspective, the longest crocodile ever measured was a saltwater crocodile by the name of Lolong from the Philippines. It was 20 feet in length and weighed just under 2,500 pounds. And that's still 10 feet shorter and incredibly lighter than the average Kronosaurus, making the crocodile seem like nothing more than a glorified goldfish in comparison. Despite its terrifying length, the most physically daunting feature of the Kronosaurus was its head. Its skull was about 8 feet long, which was actually proportionally large given the size of its body length. Anything that was unfortunate enough to end up inside the Kronosaurus's mouth may have been given false hope. After all, the teeth of the beast weren't actually that sharp. On second thought, I take that back. I wouldn't feel confident around a toothless snake, let alone being inside the mouth of this monster. But it's true that the Kronosaurus's teeth weren't sharp, especially when compared to other carnivorous reptiles, such as crocodiles and alligators. The teeth of this prehistoric sea creature were instead conical. This means that they were cone-like in shape. Unfortunately, this lack of sharpness didn't make them less dangerous. The teeth were enormous and could be up to 12 inches long from the crown tips to the bottom of the roots. This obviously meant that the Kronosaurus had an extremely powerful bite. It was estimated to be up to 30,000 newtons, which is almost twice as powerful as the bite of a large saltwater crocodile. Because of the bluntness of their teeth, they weren't suited for twisting their prey once in their grasp. But the size and shape of the teeth made them perfect for simple open and shut biting. They would have had no problem crushing hard objects such as the toughest of shells any sea turtle could offer. Just like crocodiles, the Kronosaurus is believed to have had a short neck. This may have been an adaptation to allow the beast to successfully catch small, evasive animals. Their body, in general, was fusiform and streamlined. This means it was narrowed at both ends and had very little resistance to the flow of water. The Kronosaurus was also equipped with 4 paddle-like limbs. The hind limbs were larger than the front ones. They could span approximately 7 feet in diameter. All in all, this set the Kronosaurus up to effortlessly propel itself through the waters and be an ultimate predator. Predator X, if you will? That's the name that was given to the fossil of a creature discovered near Svalbard, a Norwegian island group, in 2009. The fossil was identified as a 50-foot-long, 100,000-pound monster with a bite force of 33,000 pounds per square inch. This might be the highest bite force of any known animal. Although Predator X is yet to be classified as any specific type of animal, it was definitely a plesiosaur like the Kronosaurus. And even if it wasn't Predator X, the Kronosaurus was still most definitely a ferocious titan when it roamed Earth's oceans. The Kronosaurus actually got its name from the Greek mythological figure of Cronus, the father of Zeus. Cronus was viewed as a titan from a generation of super powerful beings. So what was it that the Kronosaurus, this terrifying monster, actually feasted on to satisfy its appetite? This creature was known to eat sea turtles, squid, and other larger marine reptiles of that time, such as elasmosaurids and ichthyosaurs. This suggests that if crocodiles existed in the realms of the Kronosaurus, they too might have turned into lunch for the beast. There's evidence from the fossil remains of the Kronosaurus that suggests that they also feasted on sharks, which I know is a disappointment to those of you who view that beast as the king of the ocean. Not when the Kronosaurus was around, my friend. In any case, grounding all kinds of food into small pieces to help digest them would have been difficult without small teeth. This explains the presence of rounded stones found in many of the remains of these sea creatures. Researchers believe these stones may have been swallowed to control buoyancy or to help process food. It's also entirely possible they were accidentally swallowed while feeding on other animals from the seafloor. As if the Kronosaurus even needed to be a meanie with its already existing power and size, there's also evidence to suggest that it indeed might have been. It turns out that after using all its impressive attributes to catch its dinner, the Kronosaurus first liked to play with its food, like a cat does with a mouse. I guess since the hunt was so easy for them, they needed to get their fun from somewhere else. Well, I think now you should have a good idea about these creatures. So let's ask ourselves what it would be like if they were still around today. And by the way, why aren't they? Well, the Kronosaurus was completely finished off by the same KT meteor that took out the dinosaurs 66 million years ago. But even before this catastrophic event, they were coming under increased pressure from an even bigger and more vicious family of carnivorous marine reptiles known as mosasaurs. You can't always be a top dog, I guess, or rather, top marine reptile. But what if this never happened, and they were still roaming Earth? Well, this might be obvious, but can you imagine what kind of impact that would have on sea tourism? Based on the impact that famous movies about sharks and killer whales had, what do you think the presence of a Kronosaurus in the ocean would do to beaches? The very creature that would eat sharks and whales for breakfast. Beaches would certainly become a great place to go for a quiet walk, because nobody else would even be there. And what about such activities as boating, surfing, and scuba diving? You think anyone would dare try them, knowing that this 30-foot beast could be lurking beneath them? Let's give humans some credit and assume most of them wouldn't. This would cripple the global sea tourism industry, which is responsible for earning roughly $143 billion every year. Just to make sure this shocking point hits home, the most expensive yacht to ever roam the ocean was called the History Supreme. Its master bedroom was believed to have a statue made of T-Rex's bone and a wall made of meteorite rocks, as well as a 24-karat gold panoramic wall aquarium. Anyway, this yacht was worth nearly $5 billion, meaning you could buy 38 of them with the money lost in potential damages to sea tourism caused by the Kronosaurus. I'm sure that the yacht's owner was happy the beast never made an appearance in their luxurious aquarium. So luxurious, in fact, that some people believe the History Supreme, reportedly owned by some business genius from Malaysia, never even existed. Rumor has it that it was simply an elaborate hoax fabricated by the supposed designer. Anyway, I don't think the trouble would just stop there. People could actually be in serious danger, regardless of being near the ocean or not. No, I'm not about to tell you that this thing would grow legs, adapt to living on land, and start picking us off one by one. At least, I hope not. I'm just going to point out the damage that the Kronosaurus would inflict through its devastating impact on sea trade. In America, ocean transit accounts for 76% of national trade. On top of this, more than 100 vital pharmaceutical products originate in the sea. I'll also state the obvious and point out that the ocean is a huge food source for us humans. The presence of the Kronosaurus could have a great impact on our relationship with the ocean, something we usually take for granted.
Now, you can't find living dinosaurs nowadays, which is a good thing, mostly, but you can still meet some creatures that might have gone to lunch with them. The frilled shark, for example, is a living fossil that comes from a family of sharks that have been around for about 80 million years. One of the coolest things about it is its long, eel-like body that can grow as long as 6 feet. It has 6 pairs of gills on its throat, which help the frilled shark breathe in the deep, cold ocean where there isn't much oxygen. The shark can move very quickly, like a snake, to catch its prey when it least expects it. Little frilled sharks take an exceptionally long time to grow, up to 3.5 years, which is one of the longest times for any animal with a backbone. The Chinese giant salamander is another living fossil that can tell you what was going on Earth around 170 million years ago. Now, when I say tell, I really mean it, as it can make sounds like hisses, whistles, and barks, and even a noise that sounds like a crying kid. The biggest Chinese salamander found so far weighed 130 pounds, as heavy as 2 Dalmatians, and was almost 6 feet long. Giant salamanders like to be alone. Hey, I want to be alone. And will chase away other salamanders from their space, except when it's time to start a family. During the day, they hide and sleep under rocks. They can make a special substance from their skin that keeps predators away. Now, gharials are reptiles that have been around for about 38 million years. They live in India and Nepal in slow-moving, muddy rivers. Sadly, there are very few gharials left in the wild, less than 100. These creatures can't control their body temperature, so they need to sunbathe to get warm or cool down in the water if they get too hot. Their eyes are close together and face forward, which helps them see in 3 dimensions and judge distances more accurately. Gharials also have a transparent third eyelid that protects their eyes when they're underwater. They have over 100 sharp teeth, but they can't chew their food. Instead, they use their strong jaws to grab prey and then, swallow it whole. The alligator gar is a fish that has a family history of more than 100 million years. It still has some cool features from ancient times, like being able to breathe both air and water. It also has a special spiral-shaped intestine, like a shark. The alligator gar is one of the biggest and heaviest fish in North America. Just like an alligator, it has a long body and snout, plus a row of sharp teeth. But instead of legs, the gar has fins to help it swim underwater. The tuatara isn't a lizard as you might think, and isn't a dinosaur either. This New Zealand resident is one of the most unique animals in the world. Scientists love studying tuataras because they can help us understand how today's lizards and snakes evolved. One of the coolest things about the tuatara is its third eye, called a parietal eye, on its head. It has its own lens, retina, and a nerve that connects it to the brain. Scientists think it might help the tuatara know when it's light or dark outside and absorb sunlight to make vitamin D or help them keep their body temperature exactly right. Tuataras can live an extraordinarily long time, up to 100 years. Cassowaries are the youngsters on our list, as they've been around for only 60 million years. They have some things in common with dinosaurs, like their 3-toed feet and how they breathe. Cassowaries love to eat fruit, lots and lots of fruit. This love of fruit helps the rainforest, because when cassowaries eat the fruit, their bodies don't harm the seeds inside. As they move around the forest, they spread these seeds, you can guess how, with their own natural fertilizer, helping new plants grow. Cassowaries are big birds, about 6 feet tall and weigh over 100 pounds. They have a special claw on each foot that is 5 inches long, and they can use it to kick real fast. If they feel threatened, they can charge, kick, and even jump on someone. They can also leap up to 5 feet in the air. So, the best thing to do is stay far, far away from where they live. The order Notostraca is a group of crustaceans that you may know as tadpole shrimp or shield shrimps. These animals have been around for about 360 million years. They have a wide, flat shell that covers their head, and they have a pair of eyes on top. These creatures can be found all over the world in different kinds of water, like freshwater, brackish water, and even salty pools. They can also look different depending on where they live. Notostracans aren't picky eaters and can snack on pretty much anything, from plants to small animals and other shrimps. Some of them are considered pests in places like California rice paddies because they stir up the mud, which blocks sunlight from reaching the young rice plants. Sturgeons are some of the largest fish species on the planet. They live only in the cool waters of the northern hemisphere and never travel below the equator. Even though they are huge, sturgeons don't have teeth. They eat by sucking food off the bottom of rivers, gulfs, lakes, and oceans. Scientists believe that sturgeons came from a group of fish that first appeared around 419 million years ago, long before dinosaurs even existed. Their ancestors survived a big extinction event that wiped out 90% of all species and went on to become the largest fish in many rivers in North America and Eurasia. Sturgeons can live up to 100 years old or even older. Female sturgeons can lay up to 3 million eggs at a time, but not all of the eggs eventually turn into real fish. Our next hero, the Pacific lamprey, has successfully lived through at least 4 mass extinctions. Its ancient ancestors evolved over 450 million years ago. These creatures have cartilage instead of bones and a third eye, which is a special light-sensing organ on top of their heads. Instead of a regular jaw, they have a mouth surrounded by teeth. They latch onto prey and sup up body fluids like real underwater vampires. And although he wasn't living underwater, the story goes that King Henry I of England might have lost his life because of a lamprey. The English monarch loved this fish so much that he defied doctors' orders to stop eating its flesh. He got sick every time he'd have it, but the lack of bones and the unusual taste made the royal fall in love with it. As a result, he got some scary symptoms from eating lamprey and eventually passed away. Can you say clueless? The elephant fish, also called the Australian ghost shark, has been on Earth for around 400 million years. Even though they're related to sharks, they aren't actually sharks. Instead of bones, their bodies are made entirely of cartilage. These fish have a special shiny tissue in their eyes that can make their eyes look like they change color from yellow to green. Elephant fish can be pretty tough and will fight back if they feel threatened. They like to be alone and usually don't hang out with other fish. Horseshoe crabs also deserve the title of survival champs, as they've been around even before dinosaurs, since 450 million years ago. 4 species are still roaming the ocean from Maine all the way to Mexico. Horseshoe crabs are more like spiders than ticks than they are like real crabs. They have 9 eyes, plus extra light sensors near their tails so they can see really well. They breathe underwater using flap-like gills near their belly, and sometimes they use these gills to swim upside down. Every spring, when the tide is high, these creatures come up to the beach at night to mate and lay their eggs, and you can see hundreds of thousands of them.
Thanks to sci-fi, we usually imagine extraterrestrials as smart beings with huge heads walking on 2 legs. But if life really exists out there, it could look like, well, anything. From an upside-down nightmare to a weird water creature looking like it was drawn by a toddler. But we don't need to travel across the universe, just back in time. Because a long time ago, Earth already had a creature like that. This is the story of the Tully monster, one of the most bizarre creatures that scientists still can't explain. Around 310 million years ago, Earth was a drastically different place. Today, our continents are scattered like pieces of a broken plate, but back then, during the Carboniferous period, the planet had one supercontinent, Pangaea. That was more than 200 million years before a T-Rex was chasing down a Triceratops. Huge areas were covered in warm, shallow seas and swampy coastlines, with thicker air and higher oxygen levels. Oceans were filled with creatures that never made it past evolution's experimental phase, like this little guy. At one point, the area that's now Illinois was just shallow coastal waters and muddy shores. Sediment from rivers often buried marine creatures, and sometimes trapped them in iron-rich nodules before they could rot away. That's how soft-bodied animals, which usually don't leave fossils, were preserved in detail at a spot known as Mason Creek. Every single Tully monster fossil we know of comes from this one place. It's entirely possible that these strange creatures were swimming all over the prehistoric world. But this could be the only graveyard that had the needed chemistry to preserve their bodies until we found them. But wait, what exactly is this thing? Well, first off, it was named after Francis Tully, the Illinois fossil collector who first found it and brought it to scientists. And second, it wasn't a monster, that's for sure. The animal was pretty small, usually only about 3 to 14 inches long. It had a soft, swimming torso shaped like a thick worm or a slug without any hard shells or bones. But its front end was both the coolest and the weirdest part. It had a long, flexible nozzle sticking out of its face, almost like a vacuum hose, except at the end of that hose was something resembling a claw. The snout itself wasn't rigid. It could extend and bend, similar to how an elephant uses its trunk, or how an octopus reaches with an arm. So instead of biting prey directly, it probably reached out with its face tentacle, grabbed a snack, and pulled it in. Its eyes were another weird, one-of-a-kind feature. They were positioned on a stiff horizontal bar extending from its head, with one eye at each end. This setup gave it a wild field of view, similar to how a periscope or side-mounted cameras can help you see more. Most animals fall into two groups, vertebrates and invertebrates. Vertebrates have a backbone like fish, dinosaurs, dogs, and us humans. Invertebrates don't, like worms, snails, and insects. The Tully monster is one of the rare cases where scientists still argue what it was. When scientists look at the fossils, they see a pale stripe running down the middle of the body. One group says that's just a gut line, which would put the Tully monster in the squishy invertebrate camp, meaning it was a weird swimming slug. But another group claims that it was a notochord, a kind of primitive stiffening rod that evolves into a spine. If they're right, that would make the creature a vertebrate, a distant cousin of fish and even us. Basically, all of this makes the Tully monster a mix of a fish, a worm, and a crab, something never found since. Based on that soft, squishy body and little stabilizer fins, we know the Tully monster wasn't exactly racing other fish. It wasn't fast like a shark. It was more of a slow-motion cruiser. It probably drifted through the water using that long snout to poke around in the mud for jellyfish, sea cucumbers, or maybe even some rotting stuff. Despite its scary-looking claw and eyes, we can't tell for sure if it was a predator. The Tully monster was pretty well adjusted, so we don't know why it went away. If we look at the fossil record, this creature had disappeared way before the massive extinction events wiped out the dinosaurs or the earlier marine life. There wasn't an asteroid or a volcano involved. Perhaps it vanished because its home wasn't the same anymore. Remember, the Carboniferous period was a wet, swampy world. But as time went on, Earth's climate shifted. Tropical estuaries dried up and the chemistry of the water changed. This probably caused Tully's specific playground to disappear. As far as we know, the monster left no genetic heir. Usually, if an animal goes extinct, it leaves behind a cousin or a descendant that evolves into something else. Dinosaurs left us birds. Ancient fish left us, well, modern fish. But the Tully monster remains unique. There's nothing alive today that looks remotely like it. And that's exactly why scientists are still pulling their hair out trying to classify it. We aren't confused because we're missing the pieces. In fact, we have over 2,000 fossils. We're confused because we have nothing to compare it to. And who knows, oceans are largely unexplored, so we might run into some new creature eventually that will add new pieces to the evolutionary puzzle. The Tully monster might be the captain among the weird prehistoric swimmers, but it definitely wasn't alone. If we look back at the fossil record, especially during the Cambrian and Permian periods, we'll find a whole gallery of evolutionary experiments that look like they were designed by a committee of ETs. For example, we had hallucigenia, our upside-down creature. When scientists first found fossils of this tiny worm-like creature, they didn't know which side was up. On one side of its body, they saw long, sharp spines. On the other, they saw soft, stubby protrusions. They assumed the tough parts were legs and the soft protrusions were tentacles on the animal's back. Years later, better fossils revealed it was actually the other way around. The whole animal was put together upside down. The spines were like defensive spikes sticking up, and the softer parts were actually short legs meant to touch the ground. In other words, it wasn't walking on stilts at all. It had been upside down the whole time. Then there was Opabinia. This thing looks like a shrimp that got extremely confused. Most animals are happy with 2 eyes. Spiders have 8, but Opabinia decided it needed 5 for some reason. 5 mushroom-shaped eyes found out on its head, giving it a 360-degree view of the world. And if that wasn't enough, it had a long, flexible nozzle sticking out of its face, kind of like that of the Tully monster. When this animal was first presented at a science conference in the 1970s, the room actually erupted in laughter because everyone thought it was a practical joke. Finally, there was a creature called Helicoprion. At first glance, it looks like a shark. But look at the mouth. Instead of a normal jaw that opens and closes like a hinge, it had something called a tooth whorl. As it grew new teeth, the old ones rotated inward, creating a literal spiral of teeth in its lower jaw. It looked like a circular saw blade embedded in its chin. Scientists spent decades arguing about where this saw blade actually went. Some put it on the nose, some on the tail, until they finally realized it was inside the mouth. All of these creatures, the Tully monster, the upside-down worm, the five-eyed shrimp, and the buzzsaw shark, remind us of one thing. We think we know what life looks like, but the history of our own planet proves that biology can be stranger than any sci-fi movie. We shouldn't assume evolution follows a straight line toward normal animals like us. Sometimes it takes a detour into the Twilight Zone.
Okay, are you ready for an epic fight between two prehistoric predators? Well, hang on. Look at this creature. You know it. An ancient shark about 65 feet long that used to swim through the dark waters of the world's oceans and was so terrifying it had no enemies. Well, almost. Scientists have recently discovered the remains of another ancient predatory fish off the coast of Australia, a fish that lived around the same time as Megalodon. It was small, about the size of a dolphin, but it could pose a danger to the infamous shark. How is it possible if this creature was many times smaller? Well, let's take a look. This monster is called Janjucetus, and technically it wasn't exactly a fish. It was a distant relative of the modern baleen whale. Outwardly, it may seem quite cute, similar to that baleen whale I mentioned, but you wouldn't want to meet it in the ocean. It had the massive skull of a whale, large eyes the size of tennis balls, and a short snout with an immensely powerful jaw filled with razor-sharp teeth. In other words, it was like a shark version of the baleen whale. Janjucetus lived during an ancient period called the Oligocene, which was about 33 to 23 million years ago. At that time, there was an incredible abundance of life in the world's waters. Giant penguins, small whales, sharks 2 to 3 times larger than modern ones, primitive dolphin species, and many other unusual creatures. Now imagine that in this ancient and terrifying neighborhood, a giant megalodon met a Janjucetus. At first sight, it's not love. The megalodon's victory is obvious, but don't rush to write the Janjucetus off. It's agile and fast. It's quite possible that it was more mobile than Megalodon, and during the fight, it would have avoided a direct attack. The Megalodon would have lost sight of such a small opponent, while the Janjucetus would have swum up to the shark's belly and opened its jaws. They're small, but there are a lot of sharp teeth. Now, these teeth were designed to rip and cut. The Janjucetus would attack the Megalodon with a small but very unpleasant bite, and the shark would have swum away after such a punch. But who knows? Maybe Megalodon would have immediately eaten Janjucetus in the first seconds of the fight. Megalodon could have won, but in terms of speed and mobility, it would have lost. So let's look at something bigger, something that could actually have competed with Megalodon. It doesn't have to be a monster living at the same time as the ancient shark. We can make our own rules. Imagine that all ancient marine creatures ended up in the same pool with Megalodon. So its next opponent is the Liopleurodon. Now initially scientists thought that this monster could grow to be 82 feet long, which is even larger than Megalodon. But more accurate studies have shown that it only reached 32 feet, which is about the size of a modern orca. The Liopleurodon lived in the waters of Western Europe around 160 to 155 million years ago and shared territory with other dangerous reptiles such as ichthyosaurs and plesiosaurs. Yes, it was smaller than them, but it had one big advantage. The Liopleurodon possessed one of the largest jaws in the animal kingdom, which accounted for about 20% of the total length of its entire body. That's a mouth. Its jaws were about 6.5 feet long. A huge, toothy mouth the size of an adult basketball player filled with smooth and dagger-sharp teeth, ideal for cutting steaks and peeling ammonite shells. And by the way, scientists suspect that ammonites and squid were the creature's main diet. This super predator was also a very fast and agile creature that ambushed and attacked its prey from below. Megalodon would have been in big trouble. The grip strength of a Leopleurodon would surely be more powerful than that of Megalodon. Besides, the Leopleurodon's size and mobility would allow it to attack the enemy from different sides. It's probably why Megalodon would have lost in that fight. The next opponent for our Megalodon is the Dunkleosteus, and to be honest, this guy has almost no chance of defeating the large ancient shark. But the Megalodon probably wouldn't have beaten it either. The Dunkleosteus was one of the earliest predators of the ocean. It lived in the late Devonian, about 382 to 358 million years ago. Its size was about 13 to 32 feet or even less, and it also had no teeth. What? A predator without teeth? How did it survive in a dangerous prehistoric world? Well, it grabbed and chewed food with the help of special jaw growths. Those growths were so powerful that they could pierce steel, if there was any around. In a sense, these were not teeth, but bones. Okay, let's say the Megalodon grabbed this predator by the belly and it couldn't do anything with its growths. But the problem is that the Megalodon would have hardly done anything either, because the Dunkleosteus was a heavily armored fish. Just look at this shell. It probably limited its mobility, but it provided incredible protection. This monster felt like a big stone in the teeth of the Megalodon. It's unlikely that the Megalodon would have wanted to chew this stone. It would have spit it out, and both predators would have gone about their business. We've got a draw here. And now, the final match. Here's the next opponent. You see anything? Is this enemy invisible? What's happening? Ah, there it is. Meet the Telemonstrum. It's a tiny ancient monster, just 11 inches long. Huh? What can it do to a giant shark? Next to the Megalodon, the Telemonstrum is like a box of matches compared to a human. But if the Megalodon had had a developed brain, like people do, it would have been very scared of this creature and would have immediately swum away. Many people scream and run away in fear when they see a creepy insect crawling or flying, or when a mouse runs across the floor. Some of us jump on the couch in horror. Not all of us, but some. The Megalodon would have jumped out of the water like a dolphin if the Telemonstrum had charged at it. Just check it out. It looks like an underwater bike with a long trunk with a jaw at the end. And these handlebars, where you would put your hands to control your bike, are the eyes. It's like the eyes of a hammerhead fish, only thinner and longer. The body of a squid, cuttlefish fins, snail eyes, and a toothed proboscis. This is a horror movie character. Scientists say it probably hunted jellyfish, small fish, and shrimp. And it didn't chew the food, it licked it like ice cream. Obviously, it's not an opponent for the Megalodon, but it's still a creepy monster. Well, what would have happened had it really started a fight with the Megalodon? It would have been difficult for the ancient shark to find it. It would have been unlikely to catch this tiny monster in the mouth, and the Telemonstrum wouldn't have been able to do anything to the Megalodon either. However, I can think of one strategy. The creepy creature had a long trunk. What if it had just swum under the Megalodon's fin and started licking it? If the shark had felt the tickles, then it would probably have worked. But most likely, they wouldn't have fought each other. It seems like they would have made perfect friends. The Telemonstrum lived about 300 million years ago in shallow seas and estuaries that covered the territory of the U.S. When scientists discovered this creature in 1955, they were shocked because no one had any idea what it was. Experts compared it to worms, tunicates, conodonts, mollusks, and vertebrates. And do you know who it really was? Well, scientists still have no idea. They can't determine its place on the tree of evolution. Perhaps this is some new branch, and its descendants simply haven't survived to this day. The Megalodon was one of the most dangerous predators on Earth. But now we know that other equally scary monsters lived in the oceans. But what if the Megalodon lived today? Who could have defeated him? A blue whale who would be even bigger than this ancient shark. But the blue whale seems to be a kind animal. It wouldn't fight. How about the Kraken? The Kraken versus the Megalodon? Well, let's save this fight for another video.